Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto manga review. This one's going to be for chapter 59, which is called Night with a K. As we expected, going into this one, we knew this was going to be a chapter 4 of a volume, so it's a volume ender chapter. Next chapter is going to be the start of a new volume. So there was a sort of expectation that, something kind of notable perhaps might happen in this one, because I think the last couple of volumes have ended with something like really pretty big happening, a big cliffhanger. And we got a cliffhanger here, and it's very intriguing, but until they actually, show us what happens, it's very hard to, I think, exactly speculate on what exactly is going on. And overall, I think we're in an interesting spot with the Boruto manga at the moment, where they can really go in sort of any direction that they want. They're setting up a few arcs in terms of, the villains are preparing their plan, they're building up the people that they have, introducing some new characters. Our hero characters are kind of in training. They have an arc going on with Kawaki, which we get to explore a little bit more in this episode. But beyond that, it just feels like we're sort of just waiting for them to commit to actually having the plot happen. So after this chapter, it feels like we're still a little bit away from a time skip, unless they really surprise us with it. I wouldn't be surprised if we potentially have 4 to 8 more chapters before we go into the time skip. I still am very I'm not sure if they're going to have Code and Eida attack before the time skip, or they're going to wait until afterwards. Because, again, this chapter sort of doubles down on the idea of, in their mind, it's too risky to go for it right now. So, what are they doing? And there's still that sense of, what is the plan? Because it seems a little boring if what they do is just this group of characters turns up at the village. That's happened the last 2 or 3 times in a row. The anime episode we got earlier on. How did that fight get set up? Jigen turned up in the village. What happens kind of shortly after that? Ishiki turns up at the village. So are we going to do that with the next villain as well, or just they turn up at the village? Seems a little boring that that's the way that they're going to go about it. So that's why I feel like a time skip might be what's needed. And then an attack can happen at some point. But yeah, it's just a lack of commitment in some of the plots, and it feels like they exactly know where they're going in terms of the setup. But I guess that's just where we're at right now. We had a lot of huge, heavy action, big fights in a row, and now we're building up to something else, the next stage of the story. So the time skip, I guess, is coming eventually. It feels like it's not particularly soon at this point, but that it's something that is going to happen sooner rather than later, because one of the most interesting things about this chapter was that no Boruto again. So this is a volume, the last 4 chapters, where Boruto hasn't been in 2 out of the 4 chapters. That's really unusual, that the main character has really kind of been sidelined a little bit from his own story. So I'm eager to get back to just more with him. And I'd say if there's any disappointment across these 4 chapters, is that the whole setup of we're going to go train. So far we haven't seen or been told what they're training in or anything like that. And I'm worried a little bit that the Kawaki arc is being a little rushed. That we had all of these episodes, all of these volumes of Kawaki gaining the trust of the people around him. And in the span of at this point 2 chapters, we're potentially having him rush to gain power in a different way and go back to the thing that he spent all this time trying to get rid of. And I get the motivation behind it is ultimately to protect Naruto, but I'm worried they're going a little bit too quickly on that plot, and then they're slowing down everything else. It's just it feels a little muddled at the moment. But let's get into the chapter. So we get kind of cool cover page of Kawaki looking kind of stylish. And then we jump into a flashback sequence of Code strangling Kawaki. Why isn't it me? I can see you're fitting the criteria, but what makes you so special? Kawaki doesn't know why this is happening to him, but he notes that Code is very strong. And Code says, I'm jealous of you, Kawaki, and I hate you so much. If you weren't a chosen vessel, I'd kill you right now. So that's just the dynamic that we know. Code, more than anything, wanted to be the vessel for Ishiki. He wasn't. It failed, but he gained the power. As we know, he has the special white karma mark. But Kawaki is the vessel, but he never wanted it, and that's this was tragedy for both characters in a way. So he wakes up on the table beside Sumire and Amado, and he knows that it was just a dream. But Amado figures it out. You're still having nightmares of Jigen disciplining you. Sometimes, but this one involved Code. He was whiny and resentful as usual, even though I'm not a vessel anymore. And Amado says, your assessment there is wrong. You misunderstand. You're still Otsutsuki Ishiki's vessel, Kawaki, and that will never change. And it's like, what? I think everyone is kind of like, wait. Get to the point here, Amado. Ishiki's soul may have been extinguished, eliminating any chance of him possessing you, but it doesn't change the fact that you are his vessel. Your body remaining Otsutsukified is proof of that. It's the reality. You have to accept it. And Amado gets attacked here by Kawaki. Kawaki's really not liking what he's saying here. And he does say at this point that the plan, Kawaki's plan, that they should implant Boruto's karma into Code, it's not a bad idea in theory, if it works. Like, it would be perfect if it worked, but he notes the problem of like, Code already has a karma, so it's highly questionable whether you'd even be able to implant his body with another karma. Plus, even if you succeed, Boruto cannot resurrect until extraction is completed and Code's body is fully Otsutsukified, as in, Code has to become a vessel. But he won't wait around for that to happen, of course. He'll strike first and try to kill all of you, starting with Lord Hokage. So, Amado's picking some sort of holes in Kawaki's plan, which I think we all felt after, like, the second chapter this volume that Boruto was actually in, that okay, this is not a plan they're going ahead with. That was the whole point of the Boruto-Kawaki sparring match, that Boruto won, and so they're going ahead with training in his way, and they're not going to go ahead with this. And here's further reasoning behind why that's likely not the case, why it probably won't happen. And I don't know, like, are they over-explaining it and it might actually happen, or are they basically saying, it was an idea, but this probably isn't the direction we're going in, but still interesting. Amado again shows that he's sort of figured out Kawaki. You want to protect Lord Hokage, right? Then that plan's no good. You just need more power to deal with Code, enough to take him down. Kawaki asks, do you think Naruto can win against Code like he did against Delta? Amado says, it's unclear how much less power he has without Ninetales chakra, but I suspect he'd die one-on-one versus Code. It certainly won't go the way it did with Delta. You know that deep down. And that's interesting, and it's really the first time it's really been mentioned since the loss of Kurama. Okay, address with Naruto. What's his level going to be like without that? So he's still strong with it. He still has, Sage Jutsu, and all this other stuff because he's much more experienced now. So he still has moves. He is still strong, has a high chakra reserve because he's a Nuzumaki and all this sort of stuff. So there's still stuff he can do, but yeah, he's no longer the, kind of at times nearly invincible character that he has been in the past. So yeah, if Code is meant to be at roughly the same level of Jigen, this is a bit of a problem. Yeah, that's likely not a good matchup. So that makes sense. And again, Amado is kind of teasing Kawaki here, like kind of really trying to get him to agree to what he's about to ask him. You want power, don't you, Kawaki? You've been thinking that ever since you lost the karma. Take it for yourself. Especially since Ishiki's gone for good. Brand new power in the form of a karma that's purely a weapon. So Amado is basically offering Kawaki right here in this panel, if you want it, I can make it so that basically your body, which sort of is still containing the power, but you've lost the karma mark, I can make it so that you have effectively the same sort of power that Code has. You have access to the power of the karma without the potential side effect of an Otsutsuki about to be reborn into you. So that's what he's offering him. Sumire reacts to this, of course, because she's seeing this person who she's now the assistant of start to act a little bit suspicious. No, a little bit, very suspicious. You have the base criteria, and I can make it happen. Are you suggesting that I let you implant me with karma again? Are you out of your mind? And Amado again is like, you subconsciously want it. And he's like, and you of all people know how much I absolutely loathe karma. I do, but I also know why. I also know that you're rational and will use any means necessary to achieve your goals, just like me. So Kawaki leaves at this point. Doesn't want it right now, but he says, it's all up to you, Kawaki. The choice is in your hands. As Sumire looks on, very concerned about what she's just witnessed. Kawaki leaves the room, and Sumire is left to ponder sort of Amado's motivations, basically. So this is what we've been teasing with all these little glances and little kind of conversations that didn't quite happen between Kawaki and Amado, is that he was eventually building up to this idea of like, you don't have the karma anymore, so you've lost your main power in a way. The thing that makes you super powerful on the same level as like Boruto and some of the other characters. You don't have that anymore, and you want to protect Naruto. And I know that deep down, a core thing with you is that you'll do anything you need to make sure you have that power. This is a way to make it happen. Now, Amado could have leaned a little bit more heavily into the idea of like, it'll only be the power for sure. No one will be reborn into you. Let's go with that. But of course, we know the emotions of Kawaki are tied so heavily to the idea that this mark previously was forcibly implanted into him and kind of ruined his life, led him this like tortured existence. So it's an interesting dynamic of like, what will eventually put Kawaki over the edge to where he will accept getting a karma mark back. And I suppose protecting a true father figure like Naruto is a way that is actually going to happen. But why is Amado so eager to help Kawaki? And that's what we're going to get to towards the end of the chapter. Well, before then, we switch over to the scene with Code and Eida talking. So Eida is just kind of chilling at a table, and then she's just like, oh, so she's been watching Kawaki's reaction this whole time with her ability. Poor Kawaki truly cares for the Hokage. Seems he's in distress over his own helplessness at being unable to protect the Hokage from you. It's too painful for me to watch. Code, won't you consider letting the Hokage off the hook? So again, it's this idea that Eida's motivations are that she potentially wants to pursue a relationship with Kawaki because he's one of the few people who she can actually potentially form an actual relationship with, who isn't immediately attracted to her solely because it's her ability activating. And he's like, sorry, but no, Otsutsuki Yoshiki is my god, in whom I still have faith, and no matter the reason the Hokage and the others killed that god, it's unforgivable. They must all be punished without exception. And he's like, and she says, you promise not to kill Kawaki. And he's like, okay, I'm making a special exception for him out of respect to you, but that's why I can't budge on the Hokage. He's my number one target. I'll kill him with my own hands. Okay, make sure Kawaki doesn't find out that I'm involved. I don't want him to hate me. So Bug is also in this scene, and he's like, what are you two talking about? Because again, like there's Code is sort of plotting, sort of in a way, taking over the world and doing all this crazy stuff, and it makes Eida's motivations all about like love and romance like feel so weird, but it's actually a very interesting dynamic given her powers. So yeah, we switch to this, and it's the whole idea of like there's other soldiers still in this facility, isn't that right? What happens if you get found out and so on? So they're setting up that they're about to be discovered at some point. Basically, you better get going pretty soon. Eida's kind of like, no one can touch me. You know the way my abilities work, of course. And Code says, that's true. I'm so drawn to you in such a natural way that I still find it hard to believe that it's due to your ability. And yeah, this is the point I was making earlier on. Eida says this, take it easy. It goes without saying, but both the Hokage and Kawaki are being guarded around the clock, plus the 5 villages are hunting Code. What's the plan? Eida says, we take our time. An opportunity is bound to present itself. My Senrigan, clairvoyant eyes, will spot it. And Code is like, yeesh, it'd be a breeze if I could get these limiters rescinded. Oh well, I think I can still win against the Hokage and Uchiha if I fight them one-on-one. And Eida at this point reveals, By the way, don't count on my combat ability. I can only perform simple taijutsu. And he's like, well, I thought you'd be an amazing fighter given your other abilities. And she's like, no, it's the total opposite. I don't like engaging in barbaric acts. I don't like pain either. And Code's like, oh, so delicate. Like, because he's obviously entranced by her, of course. And this is where the title sort of comes into play. That's why you and I are so well aligned. I'll be your eyes and ears, and in return, you'll be my guardian knight. Okay, works for me. Code asked the question, what if you do find yourself with Kawaki and he tries to kill you? And she's like, what a detestable question. And he's like, it's possible, given whose side you're on in this, I suppose. Kawaki and Boruto are Otsutsuki. You can't beguile them. That's what's appealing to you, yet it could also work against you and thus me. I suppose I was hoping to avoid this, but come with me, Code. I'll introduce you to my other knight. So we're going to get introduced to one of the other cyborgs, of course. But yeah, let's quickly go back and address that again. They're saying we're going to take our time. So to me, even based on the way the chapter ends, they're not going to attack the village straight away. Even though the aim is at some point to attack and kill Naruto and like Sasuke and so on. And also to get Amado to remove Code's limiters. They're still noting the idea that they have far too much heat at the moment, considering the forces on their side. And that seems to very much go against what a lot of other people are saying, is that like, no, the attack's going to be coming anytime soon. But they've said it now like 2 times over the course of this volume that, we can't do a frontal assault right now. It's just not going to work. Because she basically says in this moment, before we get introduced to the other character, it's going to be Code versus the entire ninja world, because she's not a fighter. She can assist him quite well, but it's still just him against the whole ninja world. And even 2 against the whole ninja world by the end of this chapter, is that going to be enough? I don't think so. So there's some whole other section of the plan. She does note that they're going to act on an opportunity if they see it. So I guess a lot is going to depend what happens on the hero side of things. Again, we didn't see what Boruto's up to. So my guess is probably going to be that if Boruto ever is given the opportunity to go out on a mission again, or ever leaves the village and there's a slight vulnerability in the security, that's when they're going to strike. But again, we need to see Boruto for that to happen. So we're going to have to note if Boruto has ever moved anywhere, or say Naruto leaves the village, Sasuke leaves the village, that sort of thing. Eida is watching for a moment of weakness, but what is that moment of weakness? That's the big thing. But anyway, we cut back to a kind of interesting scene here. Kawaki's just walking through the streets of Konoha and reflecting on what Amado said. You want power, don't you? Haven't you been thinking that ever since you lost the karma? So take it for yourself. Brand new power in the form of a karma that's purely a weapon. Shikadai spots Kawaki and is just like, hey, Kawaki. Because of what Kawaki was thinking of, he's like, I said shut up in the middle of everyone. Not specifically at Shikadai, just to what he's thinking of in his head. And then he realized, oh, Shikadai, it's you. And they just have a conversation here. Ignore them, just walk. Who and what you are is being kept top secret. So civvies shouldn't know anything, but ever since Ashiki attacked, a lot of rumors have been flying around, both true and false. But don't you mind them. Konoha has your home, no matter what anyone else says. I mean, Lord Seventh himself has deemed it so. And Kawaki apologizes and says, sorry to make you put up with me. And Shikadai says, quit it with the glum face. I bet they're all just scared. You keep holding your head high. Yeah, thanks. So just a little bit of a, 2-3 page bro chat between Kawaki and Shikadai. That's nice. Using Shikadai, not having every single scene of every single chapter always revolve around just Kawaki, Boruto, the villains, and maybe Sarada makes an appearance. So that's actually kind of decent use of some of the other characters, along with, as we cut back here to Amado and Sumire. Sumire gets to kind of jump into the spotlight a little bit here. So she goes up to him and is like, what was that all about earlier on? about Kawaki's karma. What did you mean? And he's like, weren't you listening? But she's kind of more angling about his motivations. What I don't get is your intent. And he says, did you wish to be my assistant in order to spy on me? I suppose Shikamaru put you up to it. And she's like, please don't change the subject. That's what you're doing too. But fine. As you know, Kawaki's karma was deleted. However, as I mentioned earlier, the Otsutsuki data that was downloaded into his body still remains. In short, nothing's truly changed. Here, let's liken Kawaki as a vessel to a house. The karma would be the house's door. Ishiki's soul was the home owner, but with the door gone, he could no longer enter the house. Meanwhile, Ishiki's lifespan runs out and his soul is extinguished. Do you see it now? Even though it has no door, the house itself still exists. And inside that house, Ishiki's power continues to sleep. I'm not able to set such a thing up from scratch, but reopening the door, that much I can do. That's all. So, Sumire says, you can reconstruct Kawaki's karma. Reconstruct. That's an apt way to put it, and so that's the situation that we have at play there. And I like that analogy, making it clear like what actually is going on. That, yeah, the karma mark, like what's the whole deal with like the karma mark and the connection to everything. It's quite technical, so I appreciate the analogy to put it into perspective of like really making it clear. Ishiki's gone. He is gone. But when you prepare a vessel, you leave that vessel with sort of latent Otsutsuki power. So the reincarnation aspect of it is gone. But the way to access that energy is also gone in the karma mark, which is the way the reincarnation works, but it's also the way someone can actually use that power themselves. So they're making it clear that for Kawaki to use the power, he needs a karma mark back, but putting a karma mark back is not going to bring Ishiki's soul back. He's gone. So there's still a few questions you probably have about, like, you know, how does this work in terms of like they're specifying it is Ishiki's power, but they're not trying to, I think, present the idea that he will be reborn at some point. It's just this is an Otsutsuki level power that if I do this, you can access it. And we'll see how that works with regards to if someone else tries to become the vessel of Kawaki and how that all functions. But, you know, that's the situation we have. And the fact that this is the direction that they're leading in makes you, once again, question Boruto, page 1, chapter 1. What's going on there with regards to Boruto and Kawaki both have karma marks in the future. And now we're presented with the idea that Kawaki might not even have an Otsutsuki in him in that scene. And the way Boruto's talking, that actually seems to be the case. That it could just be Kawaki using karma powers, and that's it. It doesn't necessarily mean that Ishiki or Momoshiki or some other Otsutsuki's inside him. It could just be Kawaki using the karma as a power, as we've mainly seen it used over the course of the series. So that's kind of interesting. But as we go on, so just like with Kawaki, Ishiki implanted Code's karma, but Code failed to become a vessel, so it merely lends him strength. It's a powerful weapon, a great asset to a warrior. And since Ishiki is no more, there's no downside to Kawaki having a karma again. So he ought to pursue it, especially considering that impending threat. And Sumire asks, is that really all of it? There are no other reasons you want to restore Kawaki's karma. And that'd be an interesting thing to end on. But then the two panels following this are the back of Amado's head, and then him sort of glancing around, looking behind at Sumire, as if like she's just began to ask a question a little bit too far. It's very interesting, this panel just here, to see him like pretty cool, relaxed, like he's smoking and all of this, and he just turns around and gets kind of serious for a moment here, that you're prying a little too far here. But we cut back to the Code and Eida scene, so we're looking over at another capsule where another cyborg is being held in. And she notes that this is the only one other than an Otsutsuki who is capable of killing me. And Code's like, whoa, what? So she tells Bug to open it. The door opens and there doesn't seem to be anyone inside. And Eida immediately realizes, oh, he's done it again. And it's revealed that the guy who comes out of it is already attached to like Code's back. He's already jumped on Code's back. And the guy says, who are you? You Sis's new man? And Code's like, when did he get on my back? And Eida's like, Code, don't attack him. I wouldn't do that if I were you. So he stops the attack. And then the guy, he says, hey sis, this one's a nice ride. And he's like, what? And then we get the name here. Hop off Daemon, spelled Daemon. No jumping on strangers. Remember, you better be serious about your feelings for her or I'll slaughter you if you make her cry. So she's like, she's just a friend, come on. He's clearly not my type. So he gets off, he calms down. But as they set up earlier on, this is when the rest of the cult members who are also here with to guard the cyborgs come in. What are you doing here? You know, they killed the guards. And so Code is about to attack, but then Eida's like, leave it to him. He'll do it. Daemon will do it. So one guy prepares to fire his kind of arm cannon, but then as he fires it, he like gets blasted in the face. Like his attack doesn't go out from the cannon, it just hits him directly in the face. And everyone's like, wait, what just happened? Another guy goes to swing an axe at Daemon, and suddenly the axe straight away lands in his head. It just kind of like moves away from the guy's hand and just directly into the guy's head. So really, really interesting things going on here in terms of how this is all working. A guy kind of runs forward to kind of kick him, but Daemon kicks this guy to the ground. A guy then takes out a sword to swing, but his head comes off, as if this potential sword strike just struck him himself. And so Code sort of figures it out. Is he reflecting his opponent's attack? And Eida explains it as, the stronger the intent to kill, the more powerful the reaction. A foe simply picturing the killing scene will cause the end result to be instantly reflected upon him or her. So you be careful too. And it's like, wow, what a formidable kid. And he's obviously like not serious at all, but he has this absolutely like lethal ability. So, and she introduces him properly here, my one other knight and actual little brother, Daemon. So there's a few things in all of that. One, actual little brother, so I guess that's blood relation to Eida. And because of that, that means her abilities, of course, don't work on her brother, because she explained that they don't work on Otsutsuki and they don't work on blood relatives. So that's the confirmation in all of this too. That's why he is actually one of the only ones capable of killing her. So that's kind of interesting. But he seems to like her and have a good relationship with her based on what we see so far. So interesting character there, just on the basis of like, what a pretty crazy ability in terms of like matchups going forward. They specifically note it's about intent to kill. Now I'm wondering, will they clarify that it's purely intent to kill and that is different from like intent to harm or intent to injure? So if you go in with just the attempt of I'm going to sort of knock him out, can he reflect that? Or is it solely you attacking only with an intent to kill? That's probably a clarification they're going to have to heavily bring up. And it brings up the question of like what characters are going to be suited to face Daemon and which characters aren't. So I'm guessing someone like, say, Kawaki probably won't be suited to take on Daemon, but Boruto perhaps would be, because he doesn't tend to immediately go for the kill. Mitsuki could be either way, depending on how you view his sort of cool and calmness in battle. That because he has a bit of an assassin type thing going on, it's kind of like, is that the coldness of a killer that he just has an intent to kill, but it's not like bloodlust? Or are we actually going with the idea that he attacks to like harm, but there's no real like intent behind it? You know, there's a few different angles they can take with this in terms of your interpretation of what characters are going to be suited to facing him. My guess, because he looks fairly young, is that he probably will be going up against a Boruto, a Sarada, a Mitsuki, or a Kawaki, rather than like Naruto or Sasuke. That'd be a little bit weird to see that fight happening, but anyway. So, we cut back to the, this is the final scene of the chapter. It is Sumire talking to Amado. So she says, I first felt that something was off when they all returned from fighting Ishiki. You immediately checked on Kawaki's well-being and you appeared profoundly relieved that he was okay, yet you seemed more motivated by something other than mere concern over his welfare. And this is very interesting because, like, these scenes are scenes I think everyone has noted, but it's very difficult to predict what exactly is going on. Everyone knows that there's something else going on with Amado that we clearly don't know about, and he's getting people to trust him now. And right when they do stop keeping an eye on him too much, he's going to do something. And so this is Sumire noting that, like, he was very happy that Kawaki's okay, but more than just, I care about you because I've known you for a certain amount of time. The truth is that I wish to be your assistant of my own will. I'm very worried about Kawaki and Boruto. Plus, ... and he says, you're really smart or really stupid. Which is it? If you stayed silent, you might have drawn out more intel. Don't you understand strategy? We have a quick cut to Naruto's stone monument on the wall of Hokage's, and then a panel of Kawaki sitting on top of it, so that's where he is, thinking about things. So, you are plotting something, is what Sumire says. And the final panel is Amado just kind of looking at Sumire, saying, you're just stupid. So the impression I get from that is that he's basically saying, like, in being sort of so honest about asking me about my motivations, you are being silly because you could have kept it hidden what you were trying to do. And by being silent, you probably could have learned stuff just on your own. But, you know, you're asking so openly, that's not a good thing. That's stupid. So, what I'm guessing that means they sort of have to open the next chapter, or whenever they return back to Amado and Sumire, with some sort of reveal about what his intent is. And look, people have been suspicious about Amado for ages, but now they're finally bringing it to the surface where it's like, okay, I guess we're revealing something about this now. And this makes sense, because this is probably actually the big thing that they actually do need to resolve before they do a time skip. I think even more so than almost the main plot is just, what is the deal with Amado? Because there's so many questions about this guy. One, every single, like, villain that we're dealing with right now, the cyborgs and stuff like that, are all ultimately, their powers are facilitated because of him. His insane ability with technology is what grants, like, code his, like, enhanced abilities. It kind of, I suppose, made the vessel be as good of a vessel as it is in Kawaki. The cyborgs, which have the theoretical power higher than Jigen's, came from him. All the information he knew about the Otsutsuki, when we got all that really interesting information about the karma, the Otsutsuki plans, the clan, it all adds up to this idea of, like, okay, I guess he theoretically knew about that just by being around Ishiki. But, like, how did he go about, you know, infiltrating Kara, deciding that he wants to take them down? Like, who is he in the grand scheme of things that he would want to do that and come up with such a plan? It speaks to the idea that he's this much more important character than we ever believe. But then there's this whole other aspect of him, of this idea of his daughter, that we thought before this chapter it was either Eida or Delta. Now it seems like it's probably not Eida. So Delta, I guess we go back to that as, like, is his daughter. And this idea that Ishiki offered all the members of Kara a wish once he succeeded with the chakra fruit and the divine tree. And I guess the wish that Amado had was something related to his daughter. But now he's kind of like, okay, he's assisted them, he's helped them actually take out Ishiki. That was a part of his plan. Even though Ishiki was the one who offered him the idea. But he now knows a lot of the specifics about the Otsutsuki and their plan, so maybe he's feeling that he can get the wish on like his own terms or something like that, depending on what this whole wish dynamic actually is, if it's even important. That's the big question in terms of like, okay, so what he wants to do, because he was basically manipulating Kawaki early on, of like, I know you, I know what you're like, you want power, I can give you that power by giving you the karma. It won't work in the same way as before, but you'll have the power that you once had, so, you know, go for it, I know it's you. He's left Kawaki to think about that and stew over it. And it's clear that Sumire is interpreting this as like, you can see he doesn't want it, so what are you doing trying to be so convincing about making sure that this happens? And what is the intent? And the one thing I can think of is obviously, I think a few people at this point have already suggested it. What if Amado is also an Otsutsuki? A new one we've never heard about ever before, but that he stayed super, super undercover to the point where Ishiki didn't even realize it. And now he has his opportunity. The perfect vessel is right there, ready to go. But that also doesn't particularly make sense because he sort of presents the idea with the whole code plan that it's not particularly suitable to try and implant another karma in someone who already has one, which is a bit of an interesting dynamic in terms of how that means for Kawaki, in that it almost feels like this chapter confirms to us that with Ishiki confirmed gone, that Kawaki and the whole Kawaki in the future thing is just him with the karma power. There's no Otsutsuki involved, unless there is some deeper reveal about, like, because he's a scientist and potentially an Otsutsuki, he can just immediately take over Kawaki's body with a karma in some way. Maybe because the body augmentations on Kawaki were made by him. There's a few twists they can do like that, but again, that's assuming that there is an Otsutsuki connection. But then that makes it kind of weird in that, like, that would mean that Delta is actually related to an Otsutsuki, which doesn't seem to be the case. But then it just gets very weird in the sense of, like, him being so knowledgeable about and having such special, like, skills and technology would make sense potentially coming from, like, a super powerful alien race. But it doesn't necessarily fit with some of the other kind of story ideas necessarily. And again, what does Amado get out of Kawaki now has a karma mark that is just a weapon? That if Amado is telling the full truth, the net result of Kawaki getting the karma mark will just be that Kawaki has the power to help Naruto. Basically. He'll have the power to be able to protect the people he now cares about. What does Amado get out of that? In that, again, he's the one behind all the cyborgs in terms of making them as strong as they are. So he will now be sort of responsible for effectively powering up both sides of this incoming conflict. And he has the keys to making code even stronger. He obviously is now the center point of the story in terms of the reason the villains can't attack is because he's being protected in the village. But he's now sort of plotting on his own within the village to do something that we're not particularly sure about. That's fascinating. Like, he was already really interesting, but now that they're directly focusing on it, it's like, okay, big things going on here. The other idea that I heard about a while ago is just this idea that what if Amado is actually from like a different planet? Like, he's a different form of alien race. So he's not an Otsutsuki, but he's from like a different dimension that has higher technology, and it's like a different planet. That would actually be kind of cool to just address the idea that, you know, we're dealing quite heavily with Otsutsukis, which are from like interdimensional beings. What about you know, and other people, other forms of beings from planets? That would kind of be interesting, to see how they do it, because otherwise, like, if you take a lot of the really serious stuff away from this, like potentially he's this or that, he is just a guy who is a really good scientist who deeply wants to somehow get his daughter back who died, and he like revived through his technology, but changed her so much to the point where she's not really his daughter anymore. And that's why, say, a lot of them who have been modified do sort of have a little bit of resentment toward Amado because he gave them all of these extra abilities, but they changed them inherently. And now, again, it presents a few ideas, like, say, Daemon and Eida are siblings. They directly confirmed that in this episode. Who were these two in terms of how did they come into contact with Kara, and then how did it come about that Amado changed them into cyborgs? That's a major question that you definitely have in all of this. And in terms of like specifically giving her such a weird ability, being able to give Daemon that ability, like what is it? Like how is it functioning in that way? This idea of like he can create abilities that are basically someone has the ability to look at everything that happens in the world. Someone has an ability to view someone's intent to kill and then effectively alter sort of like space and time so that that theoretical attack reflects back on them. Like, what is that ability? That prompts the idea that, you know, there's some really incredible stuff going on here, and it doesn't immediately feel like it's all technology. So that's why the whole Otsutsuki connection is still a kind of major thing in this. So very, very interesting chapter. Again, I came in with the expectations that we'd probably have like a major cliffhanger reveal. We didn't get that, but instead we get this like really, really intriguing dynamic of basically speculate for a month about what Amado is about. And I actually really like that. So I think I'm going to wrap up the video there. Again, I'll do like a speculation video about 10 or so days before the next chapter comes out. Actually, I forgot to check if they specified the date again on the chapter. Let me just check this again. Next chapter hits July 20th. So yeah, 20th of the month. So in or around July 10th, you'll see me put up my speculation video for chapter 60. Which it's going to be still tough to do. I'm guessing we'll see Boruto again. That's actually probably one of the more interesting things. Might we finally find out what the training is about? That will really help to clarify like the time scale that we're working with here. Like, are we getting maybe a little bit of a mini time skip? Then the attack's going to come in, then we'll get the full time skip. I still don't know what's happening with that. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on Boruto Chapter 59. What are your thoughts on just what's going on with Amado? That's definitely the most interesting question I have. But just in general, your thoughts on the chapter. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.